My name is Cameron Ripley. I'm the CEO and founder here at Community Boost Consulting, and we're really excited for today's session. And welcome to today's webinar, Marketing Through a Crisis, Museums, Theaters, and More, oh my. On behalf of the Community Boost team, we're so excited to bring together today's session, which is really designed to help arts organizations, museums, symphonies, or nonprofits in general effectively navigate and persevere through these unprecedented times of reopening and crisis. Today's discussion will also be sent out to all the 2020 Classy Collaborative virtual attendees. So welcome if you're watching this from the future on replay. And for those watching today's discussion live, we'll be sure to also register for this year's Classy Collaborative. It's a free event. You can find it on their website. It's going to be some amazing content as well. Please know that we are definitely going to allow for plenty of Q&A, and we want to have our panelists answer as many of your own questions as possible. I think that's some of the biggest value in a session like that. So, throughout today, post in the Q&A, post in chat, we're going to be monitoring that. So without further ado, let's get started. Once again, at Community Boost, we are a digital marketing agency that specifically helps nonprofit organizations accelerate online revenue and impact. We're best known for Google Ad Grants management, but we do everything from Facebook and Instagram ads to email marketing to conversion rate optimization. And we're really excited to have three of our partners on today's session. So they're really the stars of today's show, and we'll be introducing them in a quick minute. But we're going to kick off with some polls. There's been a ton of content created through COVID-19 about recession-proofing your nonprofit, virtual fundraising, and more. However, when it comes to finding custom content centered around, your organizations that drive a ton of the revenue through attendance, we had a hard time finding that. So we wanted to spark that discussion and bring people together from local arts organizations, local theaters, museums, science centers, historic sites, and more, and have this conversation today. So we want this to be interactive, and we're going to kick it off with a quick poll. So pay attention to your Zoom here. Let me see if I can get this other window out of my way, and we'll launch this poll to get started. Excellent. So looks like, from museums, theaters, symphonies, science centers, and more, we're pretty well represented today. So that's great to know as we cater the content for you all. Have you been able to raise funds online while being closed? Yes, 17%. We've had very successful fundraiser. 65% say a little bit. 18% said we didn't receive many donations since March. Has your organization's digital engagement increased? 18% said no, 52% said a little bit, 30% said yes, seen some massive engagement. When do you plan to reopen? Looks like 13% are, we are open. June or July, 25%, and then August, October, and then 40% don't know, following government lead, etc. And last, by what percent are you planning to lower your attendance targets? It looks like 13% aren't and are business as usual, 10% and 1 to 15% range, and then many organizations on today's session are experiencing pretty large, having to reforecast anywhere from 15% less to 40% or more. Let's go ahead and get to our amazing panelists and kick this off. So, to lay the foundation for the roundtable, one concept we talk a lot about here at Community Boost and with our partners is there's really two phases to crisis management and leading through a recession, right? Phase one is weather the storm, protect our team, protect the most critical pieces of our mission. And phase two, recessions do create opportunity, and at a certain point, we want to start to seize that opportunity. I've been doing a lot of recession, study from the Great Recession and things like that. And one analogy that really stood out with me personally is this idea that we're in a race car, right? Before the pandemic, We were all going 100 miles per hour, doing our different things. Then all of a sudden, we had to slam on the brakes. And if we didn't, we would have crashed into the wall. And but yet now we're starting to enter hopefully turn 7, right? Where we're braking, but if we hit the gas at just the right time, we can become the choice, not just another choice. We can get ahead of competitors if we're using that word. And so that's, that analogy has resonated with me, and we hope that today's session provides some insights to help your organization ultimately, start to step up the gas at just the right time. Our goal today is to share with you some of those shared challenges and opportunities, and provide insight into how Jake, Nadia, Jamie, and all of you on today's call are planning to navigate the rest of 2020. So, welcome to the panel. Nadia Lee from the Statue of Liberty-Ellis Island Foundation, Jamie Salen from the Tenement Museum, Jake Speck from 80 Players. I'll give it to you. Give us a quick introduction to share with you your story and what your role is and what you do at your organization.
My name's Nadia Lee. I'm the fundraising and marketing director at the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. Honored to be here. Happy Cameron invited us to join. We're always happy to collaborate with Community Boost in any way that we can. They're such a fantastic partner. So thanks to Cam and the team. I've been with the foundation for about 5 years now on their fundraising team. I started off primarily for the Statue of Liberty Museum campaign that we wrapped up just a year ago, $100 million campaign to build the new Liberty Museum on Liberty Island, which was super exciting, phenomenal, opened last May. And looking back now, it's quite a different year so far than we had last year. So excited to talk to you guys about different ways that we've been trying to adapt our strategy to go from opening a museum on an island that we wanted everyone to see to continuing to raise funds when the islands are closed.
Hey everybody, I'm Jake Speck. I'm the executive director at 80 Players in the George Theater in Houston, Texas. 80 Players was founded in 1967 as the After Dinner Players and opened a brand new facility 3 years ago, right before I got here. We have a gorgeous, amazing, state-of-the-art, $25 million theater. And I've been here since August of 2017. This is my second crisis to lead through. I started my position 5 days before Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. Prior to coming to Houston, I was in Nashville, Tennessee, where I founded Studio 10 Theater Company there. Prior to that, I lived in New York City for about 8 years. Until a decade ago, my entire career was as an actor and a performer and a singer. I performed on Broadway and did lots of film and television, and then had what I like to call my quarter-life crisis, where I shifted into arts management and went back to school. But that has brought me here to Houston. Like so many of you that are on this call that are involved with theaters or run theaters, much like the museum industry and all of nonprofits, our industry's been completely upended by this. Our doors have been shut since March. We've had to cancel performances. We've had to put some performances that were supposed to happen in the current season into next season. We've had to get very, very creative with just about everything that we're doing, which I know we'll talk about later in this call, but that's the that's who I am. Hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Salen, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Tenement Museum in New York City, which is if you're not familiar, is a history museum focused on telling the stories of immigrants, migrants, and refugees through the lives of actual former residents of a couple tenement museums, a couple tenements in New York City. For us, we also closed on March 13th, like so many other places in New York. And we were a museum that was funded 75% by ticket revenue. So that was a really big deal to shut down the way that we did. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about some of the ways that we have pivoted and tried to increase the philanthropy in order to support us.
We're really grateful to have you all on today's session. Jamie, why don't we start there? I know when COVID hit in March 13th, closure really impacted the Tenement Museum, yet I know you launched what we call a KTLO, Keep the Lights On campaign, and it's been helpful, but let's hear a little bit more about your journey.
Our philosophy from the very beginning, from that first day, was to respond as quickly as possible and to be really honest and candid about it. So the key for us was we weren't going to be embarrassed about going out there and saying how incredibly desperate it was. So that's kind of the angle that we took, and we launched the Help the Museum Survive campaign. And we did that through email for our audience. Existing audience which was already about 100,000 subscribers. So we were lucky that we had those people to speak to. And through that, we have raised about $500,000 just from everyday, new donors. We had 3,000 new donors come in. When in the past, we had really operated annually on 2,000 donors, and that's all we had. So we've added 3,000 to that. And then really social media with the help of Community Boost and Cameron and his team, who launched a Facebook fundraiser for us, which raised over $30,000 and brought in, I think, around 750 new actual donors on social media. And we had close to 600 people share that fundraiser and 9 people start their own. So it was really important for us. And then because we launched that and we were so candid and we did that first, we immediately also got on press outreach, because that was important, because they could spread that message. So we went out there and did that, and then that all built to a big New York Times article that we had, which then brought in $500,000 on its own, really, on the back of. So that's how that kind of stuff can really build. And really the second way that we responded to this was immediately to get out new content and digital content, because in order to keep that audience engaged and continue to engage with us in a way where then we could fund, they would donate to us, was reminding them how important we are, how important it is for the Tenement Museum to still exist by showing them all the great content that we have. So that's really how we responded and were able to kickstart philanthropy, along with our board and our president, of course, going out there immediately, just hitting the street on the phone all day with potential donors. And our institutional giving, we made sure that we got right out of the gate, looked at what we could apply for, and started that. So it was really about quick response and being just honest and candid about how bad the situation was.
I have to say that this is an absolute case study. The speed to launch here and the vulnerability, I think, really separated it. I love the messaging of it. Help the Tenement Museum survive. These are extraordinary times. The Tenement Museum is an extraordinary place. The museum faces an extraordinary crisis. And just that speed of launch was so crucial. And then you hit on something as well that I think, we've gotten a lot from our partners of, well, I don't know, is it insensitive? And should we be, putting stuff out there? And every day you're fundraising, basically, right? Like picking up the phone, putting in that work. And I just, I'm blown away by what this campaign has done, but it's also, I'm not, because you guys just moved and did everything right. What would you say the ultimate secret sauce to the success of the campaign has been?
I don't know that there's one secret sauce. I mean, it was really helpful to start fundraising in social media, which was an area that we had discounted kind of in the past, and kind of we tested the waters a little bit, but the understanding had really been that it wasn't worth the effort. We weren't going to be able to crowdsource fundraising in social media. And this really showed us that we could, but everything just built on everything. So it was all those components needed to be happening at the same time in order to kind of build to this crescendo. And I think if I had to say what the secret sauce was, it was being as honest as we were about how bad it was, because there's a fear there. Are people going to just say, okay, this is a lost cause and not want to do anything? Is it embarrassing to say how close we must have been to the edge to be in this situation to begin with? So I think that was the most important thing.
Agreed. Beautiful. Jake, you serve as the executive director for one of the largest theaters in Houston. How have you approached leading, your team through these unprecedented times? What have been your highlights and lowlights?
Everybody can tell you there's not really, a textbook for how to lead in a situation like this. And kind of just general principles of leadership. I try to be, there's a great book that a lot of business leaders have read called Good to Great by Jim Collins, where they study all of these Fortune 500 companies, and they distill down what it is that made them take this huge leap from good to great. They talk about a level 5 leader. And it's always my goal to be that. And a level 5 leader is someone who puts his or her people in the company first. And transparency, I'll go back to what Jamie said. I mean, from day one, every conversation that I was having with our board of directors, I had with our staff. We're not a massive organization, but we're not a tiny organization. We have 39 full-time employees. And so we have regular check-ins with the entire staff on Zoom, and with very, very few exceptions. There's always some things that you can't just say to everybody, but with very, very few exceptions from the get-go, we have told them everything that we're doing, everything that's going on, what the possibilities are in terms of potential furloughs or anything like that. I'm really proud and happy to say we have not furloughed a single employee. We have had 100% retention throughout this crisis. A lot of that is due to the PPP loan that we received. But we were successful in kind of being proactive, as Jamie said, about a lot of things and raising money. I guess some of the highlights, it's hard to say that there are highlights right now, but the highlights have been the PPP loan, which was so integral to everything we were able to do. Being forced to innovate. I mean, I think we have learned things that worked for us during this time that we will continue to do, that will be an essential part of our business model that might not have been prior to this, which I know we're talking about later. A major highlight has seen just how amazingly supportive and loyal our subscribers and our donors are. We do like a big, huge, very family-friendly blockbuster musical in the summer. And that was going to be The Sound of Music, and we had to just fully cancel. It was a 6-week run. We had to just cancel the whole thing. And we're still processing all those ticket sales, but last I saw, only 29% of people had asked for refunds. The rest had either donated the cost of their ticket back to the theater, or they had transferred that to a credit for something in the future. Also connecting with other arts leaders. There are so many conversations that I have now had with other arts leaders in Houston and all over the country that we would have never been in the same room together had this not all happened. And that has been hugely beneficial, not only in sharing ideas about how we're going to get through COVID, but just sharing ideas in general. And I've already made relationships with other executive directors and artistic directors that I think will be in place for a long time. That would not have happened without this. So, and I think the lowlights are pretty obvious. I mean, canceling shows, all of the added work and research on cleaning and disinfecting and social distancing. And I mean, it's just, we're all having conversations and sentences are coming out of our mouths that never in a million years did I dream I would be calling my technical director and saying, can we remove multiple seats from the theater, and can we remove them in certain rows but leave some of the seats in? And I mean, it's just, or can we build canopies around groups of seats? Is there a way that we could use plexiglass where people could see through it? I mean, it's just like living in the Twilight Zone. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that was really, really helpful. And I think we hear we need to be transparent, but it sounds like your team just executed that so well. And it really helps your whole team really prioritize what is most important, and it is valued. Um, and I think that's just some great tips, and we'll dive a bit deeper into that here soon too. Nadia, I know your organization relies heavily on membership, and often new members are sparked by experiencing the awe of visiting Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty. How have you had to pivot your own marketing and fundraising efforts?
We are extremely grateful and fortunate that we have such a dedicated membership base. Many have been with us since the start of the foundation about 30 years ago. So we are so happy that they've continued to support us. Also, we're grateful that we have Liberty and Ellis, which are two of the most iconic American symbols. Liberty, as a beacon of hope in the New York harbor, has always stood tall during many of the crises, and she continues to serve as a symbol of resilience for so many Americans and people all over the world. So what we've been doing is really honing in on that message about how during difficult times, Liberty's so important, and keeping her standing tall, looking over at Ellis where so many immigrants came through and that new life and opportunity, and honing in on that, I feel like has been especially helpful when we're talking to our members and reminding them as like, this is why we're here, this is why you support us, and we hope that you'll continue to do so. And they have, which we are very grateful for. But what we've been trying to do is, so Liberty gets about 4.3 million visitors a year. Like, there are plenty of people who come from all corners of the globe to see these two iconic monuments. So what we wanted to be sure we were able to do was continue to serve those audiences, both New Yorkers and people everywhere, our members. And to do that, we've been creating digital resources. One thing that we've done is we created a new product, which we'll continue to offer even after the islands open, which is our dedicated passenger search. So one of the things that the foundation is very proud of is our American Family Immigration History Center. Say that 5 times fast. But the History Center is located on Ellis Island, and we have a group of fantastic staff who are able to search through a database and help people find their connections to Ellis Island and discover their ancestry. And in order to continue to reach audiences, we're now offering this remotely. So people can sign up for that on our website, and we're able to really offer that Ellis Island experience. While nothing replaces being there and seeing it, at least it's something that people can do from their living rooms. It's something that can be warm and uplifting that they can share with their families during this time as well. And offering a digital certificate means that everyone in the family, regardless of how separate they are right now, can really come together and share that. So we're doing that both with a donation, and then we created a video and a downloadable PDF so that people can also have a how-to guide and do it for free. So we wanted to be sure that we were continuing to solicit, and offering digital services was one way to do that, but we didn't want to alienate those who were looking for free resources while they were home. So we made sure that we had something for both audiences, and some people have participated and collected both. They're watching our videos that we're producing, but they're also participating in the dedicated passenger search. Some people are donating 2, 3, 4 times in order to search for different family members and go ahead and share this online as well, which has been fantastic with some of our social media engagement. We've also been focusing on stories, feel-good moments. Right now, there's just so much going on, and there's so much negativity in the world that finding something positive to share has proven to be really helpful. So we've been speaking with our different staff members who have immigration stories, whether they tie to Ellis or not, and sharing those via email. So we've really increased the frequency of emails that we send especially cultivation ones, without an ask, so that we're supporting people. We're here with you. Liberty's standing with you, even throughout all of the things that are happening in the world right now. And in doing so, we created a form where people can go ahead and share their stories and reciprocate that. So it's generated a platform where our members or people who just give us their website or their email address and haven't necessarily contributed yet are able to go ahead and submit their own stories and share back. People love to share things that are important to them. Genealogy is such a touching pastime for so many people. So giving them that platform to have a voice right now, when many people feel that they don't, is something really important that we wanted to focus on as well. So I feel like our combination of consistent and strong messaging, both via social and email, along with a combination of asks and just reaching out to share photos, to share opportunities to engage, has really proven to be helpful, not only with our members, but also with grant applications as well. So with all of these resources, while they're fantastic because they engage people, it also gives you something to talk about when people are saying, well, how are you addressing COVID? Like, what is your organization doing right now to remain relevant and present while your islands are closed? And that gives us something to talk to our major donors about. So not only are we able to secure some of those $100, $150, $500 donations, but we're also able to go after the larger corporate gifts for the people that are providing COVID support right now. So we're kind of trying to use this new messaging to juggle both worlds, and it's really made us have to think on our feet.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really insightful and I mean makes a ton of sense, and and I think people's attention is online more than ever now, but yet pairing that and then sharing how that helps reach your audience, and yet also using that to make big asks makes a ton of sense and is great advice. So Jamie, Jake, Nadia, I'd love to just go around and ask how each of your organizations are specifically planning for reopening or considering reopening, and also how have you had to adjust your revenue forecast, if you don't mind sharing. And then also, Jake, we had a question from Gerald. Have you polled your audience on what would make them comfortable to come back? So I think that all kind of plays into this world. And Jake, we can start with you.
We have not yet. We are planning on doing that. Right now, our season as it stands is not set to open until mid-September. So we've kind of compiled a list of questions we want to ask our audience, but since we're only at the beginning of June, we're going to wait a little bit longer because we imagine that their responses will be different on June 1st than they would be on July 1st or even August 1st. But I know a lot of organizations that have done that. I also think I saw a question about equity, which goes into reopening. So if you're an equity theater, which we are, we're kind of at the mercy of the union, Actors Equity Association, which is the union for professional actors and stage managers. They are currently not allowing any of their members to work or even to sign contracts. I met with the Western Regional Director of Equity 2 weeks ago. At that time, they were not able to give us a timeline. I think the majority of theater leaders that I have spoken to, and for the theaters that are on this call, if you are not members of TCG, Theater Communications Group, I highly, highly recommend looking into membership. I imagine they're probably making it possible right now for people to join for less than usual because the membership fees are based on the annual budget of your organization, but they have been just an absolutely phenomenal resource during this time. And that's where I've connected with a lot of other theater leaders. But it seems that most places are hoping to reopen in some capacity in the fall. Right now, that is our plan. We've done several different models of the theater and what it looks like with 6 feet of distancing between groups and between individuals and pairs and groups of 4 and people who come by themselves. And right now, we cannot operate at more than 32% capacity and still distance people 6 feet apart. If any of your businesses are able to succeed and make a profit with 32% capacity, congratulations. That is not our model. But we are heavily going to be looking into and relying on either live streaming or producing videos of our shows. Right now, Equity is only allowed to give us permission to live stream because SAG-AFTRA is saying that they have jurisdiction over recording a show and releasing it. I know that's being worked on. We are not a LORT theater, League of Regional Theaters. We are on a letter of agreement with Equity, and they are negotiating with all of the LORT theaters right now. I know that's a hot topic there. We're all hopeful that we're going to be able to work it out so that we can record shows. But I was actually, I actually hit send like 15 minutes before getting on here with a grant proposal to one of our local Houston family foundations to purchase all of the live streaming video equipment for the theater and to also fund an operator for that equipment, remote control cameras that you can control via an editing bay. And have been talking to that foundation about it for the last few weeks. And so anyway, we're just fingers crossed that they're going to fund that. Oh my gosh, we're talking about reopening, right? I'm sorry, I got off track a little bit. But because of the capacity restrictions that we're most certainly going to be under for who knows how long, we are really trying to invest in those streaming technologies. And we hope that that might even be a part of our business model moving forward, even if COVID is completely eliminated someday. Licensing organizations have been very difficult to deal with in the past when it comes to live streaming. But they have really lightened up on that during COVID. And we're hoping that they will continue to let us do that, because I think, especially right now, but even in the future, you got to innovate or you're going to die. I don't think there is any replacement for live theater. I don't think there ever will be. There is only one experience like it, being in the same room collectively with other people and breathing the same air as the actors. You can't replace that at home on Netflix. But we cannot ignore the fact that everything is going to a streaming platform. So we were already looking into things like that prior to COVID. Now I think it might be an absolute essential part of our business model or any theater's business model moving forward. But in terms of reopening, everything's fluid, everything's flexible. I mean, we're just, our budgets are based right now on not being able to operate at more than 32% through April.
Yeah, reopening in New York City, in the epicenter of this COVID crisis, is complicated. At this point, we're, as far as when we'll reopen, we are really waiting for the city and state to tell us when these things are safe, just generally speaking. That said, the way that we've planned for it is we've created 3 different scenarios as far as budgeting and projections. That's remaining closed through next spring, at least. That's opening in the fall. And then there's one kind of in between, that's we're open, but we can barely let people in. So as a museum that is based on the idea of immersing you in experience of people who had no choice of social distancing. So we bring 15 people into a room that's 300 square feet, and we talk to them, dialogue back and forth with an educator, with a tour guide, for an hour in these small spaces. So that is something that may never return. That may never be, at least in the foreseeable future, a way that people interact with our museum. So we're looking at all different kinds of ways that we can change our model to fit that. Whether that means people are walking through the building on their own, whether it means we have groups of 4 people. So it's really something that we're having to really think hard about. For us, reopening the first stage will be walking tours. We've always had a walking tour program, different tours around the Lower East Side, still through the lens of the immigrants and migrants and refugees who lived there over the last couple of centuries. So that only represented about 6% of that 75% revenue that we needed. So even with that, it certainly won't be enough. But the way that we've been kind of getting through this and planning for this is making sure that we're sitting on task force and advisory committees of people who are collecting all of this information. Our president sits on the mayor's task force for tourism. So, we get a little bit of information there and a little bit input, and we're trying to kind of present ourselves as leaders in the reopening of New York City and institutions. But we've also been creating a lot of roundtables on our own. So we've gone out and reached out to all of the walking tour companies in New York City, maybe not all of them, but we've got about 50 that are sitting in a group where every other week we sit down and talk about different topics and the ideas. And there is value in both being in a room and realizing that everyone is in the same boat and everyone is concerned and no one has a full actual plan, and in being able to put together some of those guidelines as a cooperative for what it will look like when we open from a safety perspective, how we can partner with each other, all of that sort of thing. So we've been doing that, which is really useful. And then similarly to Jake, we are really turning towards the live events and the virtual experiences that we can do. And while we were doing all of this, kind of testing the waters in the last 3 months and seeing what our audience responded to, and everything was free, now we are working on a plan to how do we monetize that? Where is, what can we monetize, and what do we need to keep doing in order to keep that audience engaged so that they do end up doing some sort of program that is kind of pay to play. So it's just a giant question mark, and it is for everyone. And the most important thing to know is that really everyone is in the same boat. And the best thing you can do is talk to other people and get other groups together of other organizations. You can kind of begin to figure it out on your own and kind of bring together that intellectual capital that's out there. For us, at best case scenario, when we do reopen, we were planning for 25%. I think it's probably going to be significantly lower than that when we do reopen because of our specific model. But yes, there's a lot more question marks than anything else. Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do, and what we've been doing, is just planning various scenarios and planning them out as much as we can so we can pull the trigger as fast as we can when we do have more information.
Nadia, do you have anything to add about reopening, or what your team has been having to do?
Well, with being a partner of the National Park Service, so the foundation works in partnership with them as the fundraising arm for mm-hmm. both of the monuments. We're really looking to them and following their lead. So the way that it works with us is there's just several different steps for someone to get from downtown Manhattan or Liberty State Park in New Jersey to the islands. There's a long line that'll wrap through the park, so that's something they'll have to consider. There's the boat ride, which, Cameron, you've been on that boat. It is a sardine can. So, how are we going to navigate that? Then there's the inside of the monuments. There's the inside of the museum. What are the grounds like? So that's all things that I know the Park Service is doing a fantastic job taking into consideration. But the priority, like it is with Jake and Jamie, is going to be the safety of the visitors and of the staff, making sure that there's plans and precautions put in place with social distancing so that we can get this experience as wonderful as it can be, but take into consideration that we want everyone to have a safe visit to our various locations. So we are waiting to hear exactly what we're going to be doing. But fingers crossed that they will figure something out, and we'll see how it changes.
We'll hit one more question and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. So start thinking through what questions you want to ask. I've seen a couple in the chat, but last for all panelists, recessions or crises, they're certainly stressful, and your business models have been hit the hardest. But has 2020 presented any new opportunities? You all have alluded a little bit to some new innovations, but how do you prioritize that? Is there anything that seems hopeful or going well on digital that seems eye-opening that you're looking to prioritize the most? Jake or Nadia or Jamie, go ahead.
As far as what opportunities it's presented, for one, we had a strategic plan that always involved trying to reach people with our mission and with the education that we can provide that may never step foot in museums, that may never go to be able to take a trip to New York City. So that was always this kind of nut we were trying to crack. And over the last couple of years, we had been trying to figure out how to engage those audiences. And this presented an opportunity where people were hyper-focused on online content and virtual content. So to be honest, now we're reaching more people, or different people than we were before. Like, we've seen our international audience on our website and with our email communications just like skyrocket. Of course, that was an audience we were not communicating with as much because of GDPR rules, the rules about how you can reach out to international, to Europe specifically. But we've seen, for example, our website, which we always was mostly transactional, and we had been trying to pivot it for a long time to be a place where people could go and get content and learn in to service that part of our strategic plan. And we've now seen we've only lost 20% of our web audience over the last 3 months, which is nothing we would have ever imagined, because people were going there to buy tickets. So without selling a ticket, people are still doing it. So the opportunity here is we have this captive audience, and we've built a foundation for it. So this is our opportunity to really be able to do that. And then from the physical building, because we always had packing them in and people going in on tours all day long, and that was really what we were focused on. We couldn't use those spaces in different ways. So now, once, for instance, the staff is allowed even back on, which isn't right now, we can start doing things like dramatic readings and performances in these beautiful recreated spaces and filming them, or doing actual virtual tours in a way we couldn't do before, because we were funded by our visitors and they needed to be filling the building. So those are kind of some of the opportunities. And then it's just from an institutional kind of opportunity is for us to flip this philanthropy versus revenue model that we've always had. Museums and institutions used to come to us from all over the world and say, how do you fund your organization? And 75% by ticket. It was looked at this miraculous strength that we had that made us so financially stable and viable, and everyone wanted it. Turns out, in a situation like this, that is our 100% to our detriment. So now looking to flip our model from that kind of 1 to 3 to 50-50 philanthropy, I think if we're able to do that, that is going to put us in a position to be stronger, and should whatever come, not be quite as dependent on that, especially since we do have a mission to service, and that that is, we want people to make connections between past and present from our ancestors who were immigrants and migrants and refugees. And we can do that maybe more widely if we're not so dependent on the tourist visitor?
I would just say, and I would have said this prior to COVID-19, in terms of marketing, I always quote Michael Kaiser. If you are an arts manager and you have not read any of his books, I highly recommend them. He's been an executive director or managing director at lots of huge arts organizations around globally. But he boils down the success of any performing arts company to 4 words: great art marketed well. And if you were not investing in really high quality video and photography prior to COVID-19, it is an absolute must after COVID-19. Because you're going to be all of us are going to be so reliant on digital and what people are going to be seeing virtually. And an amazing piece of our marketing was actually finding community boosts, because we were producing what I would call really kick-ass video and photography content. But you can have the best video and photography content in the world. If you can't get it in front of the right eyes, it's not going to do you any good. But moving forward, we'll probably be doubling down on that. I already talked about streaming. I think that's going to be a huge part of our model moving forward. But we also have a performing arts academy. So we have classes for kids ages 5 through 20. And all of that has moved online. And I think we have discovered that we have a real opportunity there with virtual classes. We've started really targeting some more rural areas, like places parents who are not going to can't drive their kids an hour and a half into Houston to take a theater class. And they also don't have any resources for a theater class locally because there's nothing around them. But they could do something virtual or do something online. We started having our staff start pushing our virtual classes to family members and people. Like, I have 2 nephews who live in Tennessee who are obsessed with musical theater, and they are taking one of our virtual classes this summer. So we had never done virtual classes before, and now virtual classes will likely be part of our business model moving forward. So yeah, I don't know. I believed in digital before this, and I believe digital is going to be absolutely essential moving forward for any company who's going to survive.
For so long, digital and virtual, and these have all been such big buzzwords. We hear about them at conferences. We hear about them in the articles that fill our inbox that we're always going to read later. And it's just something that you're constantly saying, okay, I really need to incorporate this. But in the day-to-day for any nonprofit organization, especially a smaller one with a smaller team, you're so inundated with all of your tasks that are happening every day. You get to the office, you have your to-do list. You don't do that to-do list because you're doing the 50 million other things that happen. In being home and having to think about, what am I going to do now? I feel like it gave us all an opportunity to kind of reflect on that day-to-day and on those assets that we've been putting off and on those articles that we were going to read, and think, how can I use all of these things to continue to meet the needs of my audience? And through that, we, as I mentioned earlier, increased our emails for cultivation. We kept saying we were going to write more cultivation emails, but we hadn't written more cultivation emails yet. Now we have, and we see that people are responding well to them. We kept saying we were going to utilize all of these fantastic stories and pieces of history with Ellis Island to produce a video series. We had not yet, because the day-to-day always put something else in priority, but now we have. And we're producing videos almost weekly, where our director of the Family History Center is narrating them with her team to really share interesting stories of people who have come through Ellis. So this has given us an opportunity to sit down, think, and focus, which, as a nonprofit marketer and fundraiser, is something that we don't always get to do because we're moving so quickly all the time. So I think in addition to being able to find new ways, it's also made us be able to adapt and see this is what it may be like for quite some time. How can we continue to do all of the things that we've been doing? So with our email open rates have doubled. People are home and they're reading and they're like, okay, please give me something, and not always something that says in uncertain times, because we've all read that in about 62,000 emails, but still not appearing tone deaf. Things are not what they were, and we need to address that, but we also have been trying to find a spin to put on that so that we can send out something that's uplifting. So finding that balance between the two, I feel like is something that we've been working on in order to continue to do all the things that we've been doing, but also adapt to our new reality.
Incredibly insightful. We have one question here. I think this is probably best for Jake and Jamie if you have thoughts. But from Jean, Jake, have you considered partnering with an online teaching platform to teach your skills to the public, acting, theater, lighting, writing, etc.? Students might pay if they find it valuable. And there's that, but we could also, and this kind of pairs probably for all the panelists, we had another question. So that might, what type of course are you looking to do? But we also had if you guys have done it, we had some questions around, has anyone done some research on the actual best platforms to live stream and to do these things too?
Yeah, so I will sheepishly admit that our first virtual class launches next week, and I am not certain of the platform that they are using. Our director of education would certainly know that, but I can tell you all of that is monetized. I mean, we are charging people to be a part of those classes. We have lowered those rates, so it's less expensive than taking one of our online camps and classes. I imagine they are using a platform, though. I can't imagine that it's just via Zoom. So I'm sorry, I don't have more information for you on that. There may be information on our website, but I'm not positive about it.
So we do a lot of virtual field trips for students, and we have been using Zoom for them. And it seems to have gone well so far. The way that we do the payment for that is through our regular ticketing system. So we were able to kind of adapt that for that. But I think that at the same time, our IT staff and our education staff are always out there trying to figure out what is the next step for technology for this sort of thing. But so far, it's been fine on Zoom.
Yeah, I think they're improving that, and I think there are ways to connect like high quality camera work into Zoom, but then the user is quite used to Zoom. I actually took a cooking class last night that way with like a local popular chef, and it was really neat.
I know we utilize Google Classroom is what we typically use for a lot of our classes, which I don't know if they have a video component or not, but I would not be surprised if they did.
Right.
I think a lot of it has to do with both what's best from the production value sense and, like you said, Cameron, what the audience is familiar with and willing to use, because there's so many different things. Like we use Teams 365, and that has a lot of capability, and we do a lot of internal stuff on that, and we've tested some outward-facing programs on that. And unfortunately, you're kind of at the whim of what has been widely adopted.
Sure.
But I'm sure new innovation is going to come up from the private sector in that area in this post-COVID world. That should help us all find the right technology.
Well, I have to say that this has been truly insightful. There's been some incredible resources shared. I definitely want to thank you, all our amazing panelists. I know it's just a small token of our appreciation, but Community Boost is going to be donating $100 to each of your organizations. But more importantly, just humbled and honored that you brought your insights to all the panelists today. And I think to just wrap this up, there was really 3 takeaways I was hearing from today's conversation. And one, when it comes to fundraising and marketing, be vulnerable, be transparent, both with your team and leading your team, but certainly with your audience, and yet share stories of hope. Next, Jake said the specific words, but we have to innovate or die, for lack of a better term. Like we have to innovate, do things like live streams, new experiences, think of new ways to monetize. And I like Nadia's point as well, with by sharing these resources and engaging our audience, that's also a reason to tell our major donors about that and why they can back some of these things. And arguably, digital allows us to hit new people. And Jamie was experiencing traffic from all over the world. And at the end of the day, that is what the mission's about. And it is still very related to why we exist. And then the last big point that I heard throughout today was focus on partnerships and triangulation of feedback, right? All our panelists have their own networks, whether it's a local task force, whether it's a group of similar peers or colleagues, but stay there. And we talked a lot about contingency planning. Stay involved there. Have people you trust shoot down your ideas of why that might not work, but also it's also really enlightening, and people do want to help right now. I want to thank you all for being on. I'm gonna share out in the email website links to these 3 amazing organizations, so you can check out all they're doing. And if you're interested in following Community Boost content, we've also gotten more digital. So we're doing at least 2 webinars a month now on our own platforms. And if you like this content, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. So thank you, everyone.